so much. Good morning, South by. We are so excited to be here.
Hello.
Hello. Sparkly cane and all. Just going to pop that down. So, welcome to the first ever Apple Key Featured Session of accessibility hosted by at South by Southwest. I'm truly honoured to be here today, and I'm so excited to be chatting to a trailblazer in the disability space, a woman that is a personal role model of mine and has been for many years. Please welcome Apple's head of accessibility, global head of accessibility, Sarah Herrlinger.
Thank you, Lucy. And as always, it is a pleasure to be able to share a stage with you.
Yeah, we've met up before, and it's so lovely to be here, guys, today. So before we start, though, let's share a quick clip that I think is a really great way to set the tone for why we're here and our conversation today. And worth noting that you'll be watching this with accessibility features turned on, including audio description, which is a critical way that movies and TV are made accessible to blind and low vision users such as myself. So let's see it.
A woman without arms.
Hey Siri, set my morning scene.
Window blinds lift.
It's currently clear and 71 degrees. Today's high will be 80 degrees.
She uses her foot to pull down a comforter. Now a man with a mustache in bed.
Open weather. Swipe left.
The weather app opens on his iPhone mounted to a wall beside him. A little person stands on a stool and sings in a mirror. A woman signs to a baby in American Sign Language. Subtitles. You are the greatest. The woman without arms taps assistive touch on her iPhone with her foot. She browses images of makeup styles.
Describe images.
A man wearing dark glasses uses magnifier detection mode on iPhone to scan a dressing room.
A painting. A red jacket.
The woman without arms applies eyeliner with her foot. A cheerleader with Down syndrome high-fives a student. A DJ wearing a nasal cannula hovers his cursor over a track in Logic Pro. It magnifies with zoom. On iPad, the cheerleader taps the speak screen menu, then taps a Muhammad Ali quote.
I have wrestled with the alligator. Tussled with the whale.
The DJ rides a scooter as maps directions appear on his Apple Watch. The man with the mustache poses.
Tap, take picture. Tap, take picture.
Using voice control, he takes pictures of himself modeling in a power wheelchair. The man in dark glasses uses door detection on his iPhone.
2 doors detected. Text to stage. Door 4 feet away.
Using a white cane, he walks toward a door that reads stage. The woman steers a car with her foot and sings. Tears fill the baby's eyes. Their mother looks at her Apple Watch, which displays a sound recognition alert that reads baby crying. The man with dark glasses plays piano on a stage. Spotlights shine on him and blur the audience. The mother scoops up her crying baby. The woman without arms takes a selfie with friends. The little person flips her hair. Now in scrubs at work, she takes a timed selfie with a dog using iPhone and camera remote on her Apple Watch. The cheerleader takes a selfie with a friend. At a party, the DJ claps as his song plays on MacBook. The woman increases the volume in her car with her foot, and she shakes her shoulders. On MacBook, the model sorts through photos using facial expressions within alternate pointer controls. He selects a photo, then scrunches his nose and raises his eyebrows to crop it. On iPad, the cheerleader taps a quote by Muhammad Ali.
I shook the world.
The mother signs I shook the world in American Sign Language while her baby sleeps in her arms. The Apple logo. Titles. Some features, applications, and services may not be available in all product models.
Woo! Wow. Okay, what you've just seen is an Emmy award-winning Apple short film named The Greatest, highlighting the best of accessibility on Apple devices. Today, we are talking with the woman who has led Apple's accessibility team in supporting the creation of some of the best products of our time. They truly encompass universal design principles. During Sarah's tenure, Apple has won dozens of awards for accessibility, including last year's Emmy. And Sarah sits on the board of the American Foundation for the Blind, as well as on the board of associates for the telecommunications, for the deaf and hard of hearing. The last time we chatted, I joined Sarah at the new Apple store, Battersea Power Station in London, a store that was designed with inclusivity at the forefront. And now I am so happy to be chatting with her again here at South by Southwest. Hello, Sarah.
Hello,
Oh,
Lucy.
so excited to be here. And Sarah, thank you for chatting with me. I always love to start our conversations with a quick audio description of what we both look like, because I think it's really important for the audience members here today to get a grips of what we look like if they also, like me, are completely blind. So I'm going to take it away. I am a red-haired lady. I am white, I am wearing a blue dress, and I have floral black print design on it. And I also have black Nike trainers on. And what about you, Sarah? And could you talk to me also a bit about what you do at Apple in your own words?
Yeah, so for my visual description, I am a middle-aged Caucasian woman with long blonde hair and a little more gray in it post-COVID than I would like, but I think that happened to us all. I'm wearing a navy shirt and blue jeans and some brown sandal shoes.
Love it.
And in regards to the question of tell me a little bit more about myself. So I have been at Apple now for 21 years, a bit of a dinosaur around there. And my team's job is to ensure that every way that Apple presents itself to the world, whether that be through our products, our services, our stores, our workplace, events, even getting down to our own original content coming out of LA for Apple TV+, that we are living our core value of accessibility as a basic human right and treating everyone with dignity and respect.
I love that. And I think every part about accessibility, just for me as well, just standing on the stage with someone like you as a role model, I just feel like accessibility to the core is truly just a beautiful thing. I am currently reading my script in my ear with my AirPods, and simultaneously I am hearing all of my cue cards in my ear. So it's just a beautiful thing. And I know that we're going to get onto the history in a minute, more so about what Apple really, truly, has done in the accessibility space. But, I think it's really amazing just to talk a little bit about as well, like how I came to love my iPhone. Like I lost my eyesight around 11 years ago now. I'm totally blind, and I didn't know about Apple devices at all. Like I had no idea that my phone could talk to me, I didn't know that, sitting in the hospital ward when I was losing my eyesight, that I'd be able to send a text message to my friends after my operation if, I had no sight left. And for me, it's a really emotional thing that now it allows me to present to audiences like you guys. This technology has really molded around me as the consumer. And I don't know what I would have done if I didn't get that call from my dad saying, yeah, Luce, like you've got, your iPhone can talk to you. I'm like, what, So I think you've come a long way since then, and I've come a long way as a user since then, but I think it's just really amazing what you do, Sarah, to kind of push this technology forward.
Well, thank you. It's interesting because you say that in terms of even my tenure, but one of the things that I think is really been super powerful for me as I've been doing this role is to know that this isn't something that's new to us. As a company, our first Office of Disability actually started in 1985, which for context was 5 years before the Americans with Disabilities Act even came to pass. So our commitment to this was never because, essentially someone told us we had to, but because the company, the people here always believed that you make the best technology when you make it for everyone. And so I feel lucky that I, stand on the shoulders of giants, of people who have really been committed to this for so long. So, in building tools like the ones that you use, this has really been a very long-term commitment to just making technology work.
Mm-hmm. And can we quantify why businesses need to do this, Sarah? Like, what are the stats?
Well, oh my gosh, there's a lot out there, but if you look at the basic statistics, they tell us that up to 20% of the world's population has a disability. And that might be a more visible disability, sensory disability around vision, hearing, physical motor, or speech, or a more hidden disability. When you look at things around like neurodivergence, autism, dyslexia, ADHD, It could involve other reading disabilities or intellectual or developmental delays. You know, there's all kinds of ways in which disability shows up in the world today. I've recently been talking to a number of offices of disabilities at universities that talk about the fact that the people coming through their doors now are coming in a lot more around anxiety and depression and ADHD as well, which may not be the same things that they were used to 20 years ago when they were supporting students. And you know, that might be even some of the younger elements out there, but when you start also looking at things like the silvering of our society, as they call it, we're at a really interesting tipping point where they say that by, US Census says by 2034, there will be more people over the age of 65 in the US than under the age of 18.
Wow.
And that's the first time in human history. Within that population, almost 50% of them self-identify as having a disability. And it's not, you know, that you turn 65 and suddenly go profoundly deaf. It's a gradual change. But with all those things coming together, there's a lot of ways in which it makes sense to think about accessibility and to make your products accessible to everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, your device needs to mold around you, right? So, you know, you might have a progressive disability. Like myself, I lost my eyesight over time. So my iPhone just came with me on that journey, and it's like a little friend in your pocket, you know?
Yeah, when we think about accessibility, it's not about a checkbox or a compliance level. It's about customization, because we realize that, you know, the human experience is a spectrum. And so, you know, yes, in a case like yours, to build features that go from low vision to being completely blind, and to know that those scaffolds are there along the way. You know, one of our big philosophies is meeting our users where they are, not expecting them to be able to use the technology, you know, just in one specific way.
Yeah, and so now, Sarah, I really want everyone here to get to know what you're all about. But first, I was thrilled to see when I updated my iPhone this week that there was a brand new feature on the Apple Podcast app. And as a podcaster myself, I've just got started. This is very exciting to me. Tell me, if you can, just a bit more about podcast transcripts, because it's so exciting.
Yeah, I am super excited about this and how it really expands the accessibility of podcasts, not just to the deaf and hard of hearing community, but to many users for whom having the text available to them is super valuable as they are experiencing podcasts. And the idea behind this is we have now incorporated transcripts into all of our podcasts. And you know, I love the fact that because we have so many different elements to Apple, so many different features and apps and things, we're often able to take the best of what we learned from one and incorporate it into something else. Yeah. So in this case, we looked a lot at both how our customers use our Books app to read books, as well as how they're using lyrics in Apple Music, and built into the podcast app a new transcripts button. When you click on it, you are automatically delivered the full transcript of podcasts, and this now applies to millions of podcasts. It's not about a specific podcast that might have an audience size of something or above. It's really available for everything. When you click on that transcripts button, you are then delivered the transcript. It actually does do word-by-word highlighting, so you can follow along and give that kind of multimodality to be able to see and hear it at the same time. And you know, not only does it give you the full transcripts, you can actually scroll up and down, start it from a specific place if you want to, you know, if you've listened to part of the podcast but want to move on to another section. You can now search on all of the podcasts based on a word or a phrase to find what, you know, whatever element you want to find. So lots of functionality. And we actually designed this to have both a color contrast and a font that we've, through research and, you know, some of these other apps as well, determined are really great for long form reading. So lots of things that we can do. And also with the transcripts, one of our goals is also to make sure that the podcast creator, someone like yourself, feels like they're in control of this. So while we can deliver a transcript for you, if you feel that you have a transcript you would like to use instead, you can always go through the podcast creator app and upload your own transcript.
Yeah. And I think that's so super important, isn't it? Because, I mean, you know, me as a blind person, I want my audience to know that they're going to be able to access my content. And, you know, not only the deaf and hard of hearing community are benefiting from this, you know, we're looking at masses and masses of audiences just turning their content on mute all of the time. So it's so important that you guys have gone into this space. It's just so exciting.
Well, and I love the possibility for the deafblind community, you know, when now something could be available through a Braille display for someone to be able to take in podcasts that way. And I should mention that at the start, these are available in English, Spanish, French, and German. So for all of the podcasts out there in those 4 languages, these transcripts will now be available.
So Sarah, let's talk origin story a little bit. Let's rewind back to your very first day at Apple. Talk to me a bit about that day. Like, do you remember it?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, 21 years ago. Wow. I would say it's not so much that I remember the actual day, but bits and pieces in my brain of just the feeling of being there. You know, I do remember kind of going with the person who was my manager to walk the halls and meet people on the team and things like that. And more than anything, I think the 2 feelings that I had were, one, overwhelmed, trying to figure out all of the new job feel, but also just super excited and really lucky. You know, certainly back then, the company was in many ways a different place in that I think, if I'm remembering correctly, we had about 9,000 total employees at that point. So Apple was a different place in that respect, but we were still a company that even, you know, back then and to today, our motto was to make groundbreaking products that change people's lives. And you could feel that as you moved around the company, that people were deeply committed to making the best products in the world. And I just felt really excited to be a part of that.
You talk about the best products in the world. For you, you have worked on so many products that are just groundbreaking in the accessibility space. You know, what's your most memorable project there?
You know, there are many of them that I love. In some ways, I feel like they're all my little babies when we can get them out into the world. But I think, just to mention a couple, one of the ones that I think just made me really realize the power of what we could do was when I first came to Apple, I was actually in product marketing. And after 3 years, I moved to the education division because my whole family was involved in education. Both my parents had been teachers. I have a brother who's a Montessori kindergarten teacher, and another brother who had been an administrator in a number of schools. And I really just wanted to get technology into the hands of kids. And when I came over to the education team, I was given special education as a piece of my job. And so I really wanted to do it right. I got out into a lot of schools, started talking to teachers, observing kids, just, you know, trying to see how technology could really make a difference. And I remember at one point early on, really talking to a few educators who were working with kids with dyslexia and trying to figure out what our tech could do there. And I knew that we were working on working on text to speech. And I went to the engineer doing it and said, could you add word by word highlighting? And he asked me why, and I said, well, the multimodality of a student being able to see a word and hear it at the same time could potentially help their comprehension. And as we looked at, even secondarily, people who were second language learners and how that might help them and some of that. And he kind of, looked at me and took the information in and then we went back to our worlds. And a few months later, the next operating system came out and he called me up and said, Sarah, I put it in there. And I just, knowing that even the simplest of idea could have a profound effect for so many students out there with dyslexia or other needs. And so I just started coming back to all of our engineers and throwing more and more ideas at them. But that was kind of my first one that I really felt like this was one of the ones that I was able to really help in this way.
Yeah.
But then, when you look at all of the things like voiceover, when we brought out voiceover on iOS, I know how important it's been in your journey. you know, when we came out with the iPhone, one of our big goals was to say we didn't want to leave anyone behind. We wanted to make sure that technology really was built to work for everyone. And so in 2009, we came out with the voiceover screen reader on iOS. And it was the first time that anyone had made a consumer touchscreen device accessible to the blind community, because as we know, a touchscreen is essentially a piece of glass, and in many cases with little tactile feedback. So we had spent a lot of time really trying to build something that was both safe and forgiving for the blind community, meaning something that you wouldn't be fearful that if you just happened to touch on the wrong place on the screen, you were suddenly going to be, you know, buying something on a website you didn't want to buy. We made it so it was something that the blind community could feel like they had control of their device.
Yeah.
And so that one was certainly another really big one where the profound change of how the community then felt, okay, if the world's going to go in this direction of touchscreens, it doesn't mean that we're left without, you know, use of this technology.
I honestly think that gives me the chills, and I think back to my first day at my job, you know, without Apple, I don't know what I would have done, you know, and it's how I see myself. You know, these products that you just hold in your hand, they mean so much to everyone, but personally for a disabled community, I think, you know, I rely on it for everything. And, you know, who knew that a touchscreen could be accessible to someone with sight loss? You know, it's those ideas that are thinking outside the box and the culture at Apple that has brought you to sitting here today, and it's just amazing. I know there's a massive universal design culture at Apple, and could you talk to me a bit more about that, Sarah?
Yeah, it is certainly something that is incredibly important to us. Part of that is based on the fact that this value has been a part of our culture for so long. So, you know, I am incredibly grateful that throughout the company, accessibility is something that's built in at the start. You know, for any product that we make, our team is there to just brainstorm with people. What are the potential use cases? You know, who might use this in a way that's slightly different than someone else? And also understanding the fact that, you know, one user with a specific disability may use it in a completely different way than someone else does. Or with the fact that often disabilities may come in, you know, in pairs and triplets. People may have more than one disability. So how do you ensure that things are going to work well together based on someone's unique experience? And so deeply embedded in our culture is the disability mantra of nothing about us without us. The way that we approach this is by having the users of these technologies be a part of our teams, and not just the fact that the accessibility team is made up of so many individuals who have disabilities and use these different assistive technologies, but by building this into the core of our products, that means that we can hire the best people all over Apple who can then provide us feedback as well. So it means that, you know, whether that be somebody in the retail team or somebody in finance or somebody in design or whatever it might be, we're hiring people throughout the company and then ensuring that those are the people who start by giving us some of our best ideas, but not just even within our own ranks. We're deeply committed to working with the communities in general, whether that be, you know, potentially larger advocacy groups, or even just the fact that, you know, we've had a customer-facing email address of accessibility@apple.com for over 20 years now. And we get tons of email in every day from customers who are asking questions, sharing feedback, bugs, whatever it might be. It's a constant kind of feedback loop for us to make sure that whatever we're doing is not building for a community, but building with them.
With a community.
Yeah.
Definitely. I really feel that as a user. I really want to dive into what all of these innovative features are and talk about some of them. But first, let's show one more clip that really brings home what's new in accessibility at Apple.
Titles: The Lost Voice. In the thicket of a forest, a little girl stands. A large medallion rests on her collared shirt. She lifts the medallion and opens it to a compass. Now, a large pink and white furry creature wearing a green leafy shirt approaches.
Why, oh white creature, are you so quiet? You've lost your voice.
The furry creature nods.
I'll help you find it.
He stares through his red glasses. They look at her compass.
Let's go. Let's look over here.
Maybe your voice is under the smoke. No voice there. Just this frog.
Now they search on separate hillsides.
Anything?
The furry creature lifts his empty hands.
Could it be up in that tree? Not in my tree. Nothing to see.
An owl sits on a branch and turns its head left and right. The girl and creature walk through the forest, then follow footprints on a sandy dune.
Can it be found atop the mound? Or is it deep down, underground?
The pair look down. Beneath the soil, a turnip smiles and shakes its head.
Have you checked in the boat?
I can't find it!
What did it fall back down your throat? Open your mouth. Open wide. Why, I can't see your voice inside.
Now on the shore, the girl holds a telescope. She looks into the creature's mouth. On a log beside a fire, the pair sit dejected.
It seems you have so much to say.
The girl scoots closer to the creature. He gently cradles her under his arm. Now in a bedroom, the Lost Voice storybook lies open beside a nearly sleeping girl.
I'm sure we'll find another way.
Read it again.
Okay.
Her dad, sitting in a wheelchair, wears a green leafy shirt.
One more time.
He types on his iPhone. Titles: Personal Voice recreates your own voice on iPhone, so it's never lost. The Apple logo.
Oh, so talk to me then, Sarah, a bit about speech accessibility and what we're seeing here in this film. What is live speech and personal voice?
Yeah, so I think backing up for a second around speech, you know, we're always trying to expand the audience of people who can use our technology. And so this last year, we actually added a fifth pillar to our work from vision, hearing, physical, motor, and cognitive to add speech in. And our efforts here were really around trying to support individuals who are non-speaking or at risk of speech loss. And so the two features that were shown in this video, the first of which is live speech. That's the one he was using at the very end. And what live speech does is it enables you to be able to type what you want to say onto the screen of your device, whether that be an iPad, an iPhone, or a Mac, and have that spoken out for you. You can do that by, you know, live typing letter by letter, or being able to have phrases stored for you. If there's something like your coffee order at your local barista that you always use, you could just put that in and have it held over so you can get to it whenever you want. And you can use live speech in a number of different circumstances, really pretty much anywhere you would want to use it for presenting your voice, whether that be in a one-on-one conversation in person. It also works in phone calls and FaceTime calls, so you can use that to be able to communicate. Now that could be used with any of our built-in voices for someone who is non-speaking, but for someone who is at risk of speech loss, you can use what's called personal voice to actually create a digital version of your own voice. And to give a little bit more context as to why that might be relevant to someone, when you think about, for example, somebody with ALS or MND, motor neuron disorder as it's referred to in the UK, for someone who has ALS, you have a 1 in 3 chance of losing your ability to speak over the course of your lifetime. And so for someone who is at risk of speech loss, you know, one of the things we really think about with our technology is how much it's used for communication, and how much communication is such just a human trait. You know, who we are is really about how we communicate with others. And for those who are at risk of speech loss, when we talked with a lot of people who have ALS or other types of muscular degeneration that might bring speech loss, They talked about how, how they just wanted to still be able to say, I love you, or to have a moment like this video where it was, being able to read to a child that's so important to them to still do in their own voice.
Yeah.
So we built personal voice to be something that was very Apple-esque, very simple and easy. It takes about 15 minutes to dictate into your device, whether that's, once again, an iPhone, an iPad, or a Mac. And then you, after you've completed that, you plug in your device, let it sit overnight, and the next morning it has generated a voice for you, all done on device. I should mention one of our other core values is privacy. So this is something where it's not sent to the cloud. Apple doesn't get access to your files or your voice. It's all just generated via AI on the device and kept for you. So then you are able to use that voice for your own needs.
Yeah, and that's so incredible. That's a whole different type of accessibility for the one that I use, for instance, VoiceOver. And could you tell me a bit about the film? Because this is so unique. And when I first watched it, I just burst into tears. It was just so beautiful. How do you come up with the ideas behind the film?
Yeah. Well, my gosh, I would say to start off, we have an amazing creative team with whom we work so closely, where everything is about making sure that when we do a film like this, it is done in a way that is incredibly respectful and inclusive of the communities.
Yeah.
So in this case, this was a film that we put together over in New Zealand. As an aside, we were very lucky to be able to work with the Academy Award-winning director Taika Waititi on the film itself and doing all of the amazing CGI and the incredible story. But more importantly was the people who were engaged in it from the communities. And I can say this same thing for the first film we saw, The Greatest. We start by working with individuals who are users of these technologies and finding out about how they are in their daily lives already using our technology and really working with that as a baseline. So in this case, if we talk in particular about our central character, the father, that was Dr. Tristram Ingham, who is a professor and researcher at the University of Otago in Wellington. He is both an incredible advocate for the Indigenous community of New Zealand, as well as an international advocate for disability. He is an individual who has a form of muscular dystrophy called FSHD, which creates, a progressive muscular degeneration. So he started using a wheelchair about 10 years ago, and now more and more is experiencing his own speech loss. And so as a part of this process, he created his own version of personal voice, and that is what you are hearing in that piece. So with that, there was a lot of working with him, a lot of working with individuals behind the camera to really craft a piece that was really truthful to the experience of someone with speech loss.
Yeah, they just want to be able to read a story to their family, Oh, lovely. And I'm a bit biased because I love voiceover. I've said this throughout this whole talk. But, I know we chatted about Magnifier and we have done a lot. Can you talk to me a bit more about vision accessibility?
Yeah, well, I think, one of the elements around it, as I mentioned, is it's for us, it's a continuum. It's really about customization. And you mentioned Magnifier, and I think probably your experience, not just using it prior to your full loss of sight, but also as somebody who's a member of the blind community. It's actually one of my favorite features as well. I am very much an eyeglass wearer in life, and it's the first thing I put on in the morning and the last thing I take off at night. And so I am a big fan of Magnifier because if I'm ever without my glasses, and I'm, for example, in a restaurant, I can't read a menu to save my life. So I use Magnifier as a way to be able to magnify things out in the real world. You can use it as if it's a basic magnifying glass. But there are a lot of features that are also built in that are for a more diverse vision loss perspective. One of the things I love is within Magnifier, there's a thing called detection mode. And detection mode is a number of different things that you can, toggle on and off to be able to detect things out in the world, most specifically just in support of the blind community. So there's all kinds of things from being able to detect images, text, be able to point at something with your phone up and have it read out, for example, the buttons on a microwave. Or we saw in the video, the first video, door detection, when it tells the guy that is the door to stage. But my personal favorite of the detection modes is people detection. And for a little bit of background on that one, people detection is a great example, I think, of some of the ways we get our ideas. This one came from one of our own employees who is a massive music buff. He actually is a professional DJ as well on the side. And he, at one point, had mentioned that he just wished his iPhone would help him understand when a line moved, whether that be the line in the grocery store or when he's waiting in line to go into a concert, and so that the person behind him doesn't get frustrated that he's not moving forward and bump him or anything else. And as we were investigating this, suddenly COVID happened, and we realized that this could be a great feature in support of social distancing. And so we fast-tracked the feature and got it out in the fall of 2020 to help members of the blind community be able to understand where people were in proximity to them as they move through space. And this feature, and a lot of detection mode, actually uses LiDAR, which is built into the Pro models of our iPhones and our iPads. But that was actually kind of a cool thing when we kind of, as kids in the candy store, looked at all of the hardware in our technology and went, wow, LiDAR is really great to be able to help this spatiality. And so I would say, as much as people detection both gives an audible, 6 feet, 4 feet, 3 feet as someone comes close to you, it also gives a visual. So for someone like myself, I will admit I have no spatial proximity. I can't for the life of me tell you what's 3 feet or 6 feet or 10 feet. And so being able to have that visual for myself when I was going through social distancing to understand whether I was far enough away from someone was really valuable as well. So.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, when that came out in the pandemic, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I can social distance myself. It was so scary. And then suddenly I had this whole autonomy in my phone. I was like, oh, it's just so brilliant that you recounted that story. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we all had to go get groceries. We all had to do that, to have that independence and know that you had some level of safety was good.
Definitely. And so I know you're redesigning iPhones and iPads for people with cognitive disabilities. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, actually we put out a feature this past fall called Assistive Access. And this is an example of just with every single operating system, we're trying to look at, once again, is there a community that maybe we might not have served in the past or could serve better. And in this case, this was in support of individuals with intellectual and developmental delays and the caregivers who support them. For some people, technology feels very complex, and being able to simplify the UI may make it an easier experience for them to be able to use. And so with Assistive Access, which you can find in the accessibility features of your iPhone and iPad, it's just a simplification of the UI. Big, bolder labels and buttons, a lot of ability to use, for example, individuals' faces for things like one of the things we did was take the phone app and the FaceTime app and merge them into an app called Calls. And so you can choose to have just a couple of contacts available to someone. So maybe not their entire contact list that would be overwhelming, but something for someone who might just say, Mom, Dad, your brother, your caregiver, with big pictures of those people, so that then when someone, should they want to make a call to someone, if they tap on it, it'll say, do you want to make a phone call or do you want to make a video call? And then give them the opportunity and a lot of chance to say, okay, is this really what you want to do? So they don't potentially do something on the device that they didn't intend to do. lots of great big back buttons, so they always know how to get back out of things, and really just making it simple and easy both for someone to use and someone to set up. And we started off by doing this with the main things we find people use their phones and devices for in general, which is making phone FaceTime calls, messages, camera, photos, and music. So those are kind of the 5 places that we've started this process of really kind of simplification so that somebody who does have an intellectual or developmental delay can use the device in a far more simplified way.
Fabulous. It's amazing to see that grow. So the question on everyone's minds, the Vision Pro, it's new, it's amazing. How accessible is it though? Because I was like, oh, how do I use that as a blind person? It's goggles, right? I don't know.
Yeah, you know, I'm super excited about this. There's so much accessibility that we've built in. You know, I think this is the culmination of the 40 years of work we've been doing around accessibility to take this brand new spatial computing platform and work to make sure that it works for a really broad range of people. So dozens of the accessibility features that people already know and love in our other products, we have ported over into Vision Pro and reimagined them to support this new spatial computing platform. So whether that be you know, switch control or voice control, even things like voiceover, reimagined a whole new gesture set in support of the blind community to once again make it something very safe and forgiving for this community. But even just at its baseline, I think the fact that the way that we've designed this to have all of the input methods be really intuitive. So being able to run this via your voice, via eye gaze, or via gestures are all just really simple and easy ways. And to be able to do it in a way that's very fluid. So maybe if you're someone who has a physical motor challenge, but some dexterity, so as you start your day off, you want to use gestures to use the device. As the day progresses, if that may become tiring, you can switch to either voice or eye gaze. And as a piece of eye gaze, there's a fantastic feature called Dwell, where just by looking at a specific element on the screen and holding your focus there, you can use that to be able to choose that element. And so not even having to ever do a gesture or anything else, just via eye gaze, this really opens up this platform to someone with an extreme physical motor limitation for whom eye gaze and that Dwell feature may be the only way they can use it, but suddenly it completely opens this platform to them.
Yeah, and you talk about that amazing address that you've had open, that feedback address. Have people been getting in touch with you? Because it's only been out for a month, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'm super, you know, it's wonderful. We get so much feedback from people. There's a lot of notes we've been getting in from people who are saying it's really already doing a lot to change their lives. And that may be, you know, things like, I see things from people writing in saying, my specific vision circumstance is one where I have one dominant eye. Is this going to work for me? And when we've said, yes, you can set it up to work just with one dominant eye, we'll get feedback from people saying, I got it, and this is fantastic. It's, you know, it's working in a way I had no expectation that you would have done, but thank you for thinking about this specific circumstance. Or those who do have physical motor limitations who are really leaning into Dwell and loving it as a feature. So yeah, there's a lot of great feedback coming in. I think the other thing is this is only version 1, you know, we are super excited to get in all this feedback and have people tell us how they're using it, and in many cases how they'd like to use it more. So we definitely encourage anybody who wants to write to us, please share as much feedback as you'd like.
Definitely. And AI plays a massive part in everyone's lives more and more each day. For me and a lot of people in my community, it allows us to do things that we would have only dreamed of a few years ago. For example, one of my favorite apps is Be My Eyes, which uses human volunteers and also AI to describe any image that I send to it, that I can just chat with it like a normal person. It's a bit like, woo. But AI is so much more than that though, right? It's not just chatbots, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, AI is so much the heart of what we're doing already. From our perspective in accessibility at Apple, we've been relying on AI for years now to be the engine to support so many of the things we've seen even in the videos today. You know, when you think about something like, whether it's people detection or door detection, personal voice, those are all incredibly complex algorithms that are the foundation to be able to support all of these things that we want to do. Another one that was in the first video, sound recognition, being able to use AI to understand whether something is a fire alarm or whether it's a baby crying, a dog barking, even water running in the background, to give that visual alert for an auditory element in your surroundings. Mm-hmm. You know, we've been really taking the best of AI and using it for years to create these fantastic features. So I am super excited at where AI has, you know, been for a while and where it can go.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see what's next for AI on Apple devices. I think it's always something that's obviously you're on top of and have been for years. But so for those in the audience who don't identify as disabled like myself, why should they care about accessibility and why now?
Well, I think, you know, there's a lot of reasons, not the least of which kind of some of the statistics we talked about. You know, whether you yourself self-identify as having a disability now or may in the future, whether there's somebody in your life who has a disability, or even just if you look at some of these accessibility features as kind of life hack productivity tools for you. There's so many people I know who use accessibility features who don't identify, but find them to be incredibly helpful in their lives. So I certainly encourage everyone in here to open the accessibility settings and you know, play around in there and figure out whether there's something. I would say chances are you will, by the time you're done, find something that you're going to end up using in your daily life. So I think whether it's in support of someone in your life, yourself, or just because it's kind of a cool, you know, I consider this to be some of the most creative work that Apple does. You know, this shouldn't be seen as something that is compliance. We are doing things in our group that are just mind-blowing, and how we're taking advantage of what all of our, you know, Apple's tech can do. And so some of these, you know, as an engineer, I just think it's some of the most creative work you can do. Yeah,
I agree. I think, you know, all you need to do is go onto that accessibility menu and a world of dreams can open up on your phone.
Yeah,
definitely. With all this in mind, how can people and businesses make their products more accessible?
You know, I think the first thing is really to adopt that mentality and the mantra of nothing about us without us.
Yeah.
I've seen so many circumstances where someone with the best of intentions wants to, you know, has an idea, thinking that they are going to solve a problem for a community, and does it with that view of doing it for and not with. You know, as they gain feedback from the actual community, hopefully before they get to the end of their project and not after, but where someone in the community will say, that's actually not the problem that we need solved, it's this. And so I think the more that you understand that engagement is so important. Yeah. And also, it's not just about one disability. You know, one person with a disability may not be the best person to talk to about a different disability.
It's a spectrum, even within separate disabilities, right? You know, I always say blindness is a spectrum, you're so right.
And often just because you talk to one person who is a member of the blind community doesn't mean you've now gotten the information about the entire blind community. So, you know, I think it is, you know, one of the reasons that we work to hire so many people with different types of disabilities is we need that really broad view of what we're doing, and making sure that then when it drills down into what is the feature for a specific community, that we have people who can really engage. And then if we feel like we don't even have the full perspective we want, that we're going out to get more through other outlets. You know, it really is about that engagement and making sure that you have a lot of interaction right from the start, so that you're, you know, because really the worst thing you can do is build something that isn't the solution that the community really needs.
I think that's a really great thing to end on. It's the worst thing you can do to build something that the community doesn't need, you know. I think it's all about communication. Communication. And also it's about asking and giving autonomy to the disabled person, you know, behind the scenes, giving us a seat at the table, you know. That's what Apple truly does. So thank you, Sarah, so much today for chatting to me. And make sure as well to head on over to 9C after this talk for transforming media for disabled audiences with Jiffy, Scribely, myself, and Keely Catwells, because that's going to be a really good panel as well. But thank you so much, Sarah. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Lucy. The pleasure has been all mine. It's always wonderful to be able to spend time with you. And I am very much looking forward to your panel next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.